I'm Samantha Doyle, 33, founder of a Boston consulting firm. To my family, I'm still the invisible daughter. The invitation came without warmth, just a date and a reminder. My ex-fiancé is marrying my sister, Vanessa Doyle. Before I tell you what happened when I walked into that party wearing the dress meant for my wedding, tell me, have you ever faced someone who betrayed you and had to smile through it? Subscribe if you've ever been pushed aside by the people who should have lifted you up. This isn't a story of revenge. It's about reclaiming your voice when they've done everything to silence it. The creamy texture of the envelope stood out against the dullness of my marble kitchen counter, like it didn't belong there. Like I didn't belong in their world either. My name was handwritten in looping cursive, the kind my mother reserved for formal occasions or legal threats. I turned it over twice before opening it, like handling something that might bite. Inside was a card thick enough to double as armor, gold foil embossed, a picture of champagne flutes, and beneath it all, in perfectly printed serif, "You are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Vanessa Doyle and Thomas Hartwell." Formal? Remote? No, dear Samantha. No, we'd love to see you. Just instructions, date, time, venue. Signed in ink by my mother. I stared at the invitation for a long time, my fingers tightening at the corners until the card began to bend. So they were throwing a party. And I was supposed to come. As what? Set decoration? The exiled daughter? The financial success story no one wanted to acknowledge? Caleb walked in, still smelling faintly of cedarwood and city wind. He glanced at the envelope, then at my face. "What's that?" I held it out without a word. He read it once, then again. "Wow," he muttered. "They invited you." "No," I said flatly. "They summoned me." He sat down across from me, quiet for a beat. "Are you going?" I didn't answer immediately. My eyes drifted to the city skyline beyond our floor-to-ceiling windows. The view from my penthouse was everything I'd worked for. My solitude, my control, my peace. And yet, that little rectangle of cardstock was unraveling something inside me I hadn't let surface in years. "I remember the last time I was invited to a family celebration," I said, voice low. "High school graduation dinner. Ended with my father telling me I was a burden. My mother asked if I could maybe smile less aggressively in the photos." Caleb winced. "They made it clear then," I continued, "that I'd never be enough. And I've kept my distance ever since." "But you kept the dress," he said softly. I froze. He was right. Somewhere in my closet was a blush-colored silk dress I had bought years ago, for my wedding. A wedding that never happened because Thomas, the man I was supposed to marry, had left me. Weeks before the ceremony, Vanessa had comforted me with wine and platitudes. "He wasn't good enough for you anyway." I believed her. Until I didn't. I stood abruptly and walked to the bedroom, pulling the closet doors open. There it was, still in its original garment bag, untouched, suspended in time. I unzipped it, ran my fingers over the fabric. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. But I wasn't indifferent either. Something in me had calcified, and this invitation was a chisel. Caleb appeared at the doorway. "If you don't want to go, you don't have to," he said gently. "I want to," I said, not looking at him. "To support her?" he asked, cautious. I turned, met his gaze. "Number to end this. To say goodbye to the idea that they'll ever change, that they ever saw me." He nodded, understanding something deeper I couldn't yet name. I returned to the closet, carefully lifted the dress from its hanger, held it against me in the mirror. It still fit. Not just physically, but symbolically. It had been meant for a new beginning once. Maybe it still could be. Not for a wedding, but for a funeral of illusions. I wasn't going to celebrate love. I was going to bury illusions. I stepped into the Doyle mansion, my heels clicking softly against polished marble that had once echoed with my childhood hesitations. The warm, golden lights did little to soften the chill that clung to the air, nor did the orchestra's rendition of some classic lull the pit in my stomach. The scent of imported roses mingled with perfume that was more expensive than it was pleasant. A waiter drifted by with flutes of champagne. I declined. It wasn't the alcohol I feared, it was the celebration I couldn't stomach. Vanessa spotted me from across the hall. She offered a smile. Small, polite, guilty. She didn't move toward me. Instead, she adjusted a centerpiece on a nearby table, pretending it needed her attention. The last time I celebrated anything in this house, I was 16. Mom told me, "We'll skip a party this year. You haven't really earned one." I had cried that night into a pillow, convinced that maybe I hadn't. A tap on my shoulder snapped me back. A woman in a jewel-toned gown gestured toward a seating chart. "You're Samantha, right? You're at table 9. Table 9, far from the head table, practically in the hallway leading to the kitchen. I made my way through the crowd. A few strangers nodded politely. Most didn't look up. The chair at table 9 creaked under me. I watched as my parents moved gracefully among the guests, laughing with business partners, air-kissing old friends, presenting themselves as the perfect couple. Their choreography was flawless, their performance award-worthy. Eventually, they glided over to my table. Elaine's smile was sugar-coated with barely restrained calculation. Gerald's eyes scanned me as if sizing up a purchase. "Darling," my mother began, "so glad you could come. It means the world to Vanessa." I raised an eyebrow. "Does it?" She gave a dismissive laugh and sat down beside me. "Of course. Family is everything on a night like this." Gerald nodded, sipping from his glass. "How's the condo? Still in the North End?" I stiffened. "Yes." Elaine leaned in. "You've always had such good taste. That place, so chic, so well located. And with the market being what it is." Her voice trailed, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. I saw the pivot coming before she even said it. "We were thinking," she said, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. "Vanessa and Thomas could start their life somewhere. Solid. Stable. That condo would be perfect. And since you're not really using it..." "I live there." I cut in calmly. "Of course," she rushed. "But you work so much. And you're always traveling. You've never been... nesty." There it was. The code for not maternal. For not a real woman. "You're not even planning to have kids," she added, her smile tightening. "It's such a waste for space like that to just... sit." I could feel the heat rising behind my ears, but my face stayed composed. Gerald swirled his wine, watching me like a hawk watches a rabbit cross an open field. Vanessa stood a few feet away, chatting with a cousin. She must have heard. She didn't turn. I looked back at Elaine. Her pearls gleamed under the chandelier light, but her expression was dull with entitlement. They weren't asking. They were laying groundwork, just like they always had. Ask gently, shame forcefully, and eventually take. I set down my untouched glass, leaned in close so only she and Gerald could hear. "If you're going to steal again, at least don't raise a glass first." Her smile cracked. Just slightly. But enough. The space between her lips stopped curving. The air between us thickened. Her pupils narrowed. Not in confusion, but recognition. I knew, and she knew I knew. For a second, no one said anything. A violinist nearby missed a note. Someone coughed. Then she stood, smoothing her dress, voice suddenly too bright. "Well, we won't keep you. So many guests to see." They walked away without another word. My mother's smile cracked, and in her silence I heard a promise of war. I expected cruel words. I didn't expect glass to fly. The back patio shimmered under fairy lights, a deliberate attempt to look timeless. Rose petals floated in shallow bowls of water, and the scent curled in the air like something too sweet to trust. I stood near the edge of the garden, the cool marble tiles beneath my heels grounding me. Music hummed from inside, muffled by glass doors and distance. I took another sip of champagne, more out of habit than enjoyment. Elaine approached first. Her heels clicked like metronomes of menace. Gerald followed a beat behind, his smile tightly stretched, his eyes hard. I didn't flinch. "There you are," my mother said, her voice soft enough to mask the sharpness, hiding outside like a guest at her own funeral. "I thought I'd spare the party some tension," I replied. My tone was even, clipped. "Wouldn't want to upset the wine and roses." She glanced at my shoulder, always so dramatic. Gerald stepped forward. "We need to talk. This attitude of yours isn't helping anyone." "What you mean is I'm not agreeing with your plan," I said, crossing my arms. Again, Elaine's eyes narrowed. "We're your family, Samantha. Vanessa is starting a life. You're clinging to a condo like it's sacred ground." "It's not the bricks," I said. "It's the principle." "You're not even married. No children. What do you need it for?" Gerald's voice was louder now, drawing attention from the tables inside. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't raise my voice. "I needed it when you didn't think I deserved space. I needed it when I slept on a friend's couch after you kicked me out." Elaine laughed, brittle and sharp. "Don't rewrite history. We helped you. Paid for your education." I took a slow step forward. "And never let me forget it. Every cent was a chain. Every favor a leash." Elaine's grip on her wine glass tightened. "Ungrateful," she whispered. "You turned your back on your blood. You only remember I exist when I'm convenient." That was when it happened. She didn't scream. She didn't even curse. Just a flick of her wrist, and the wine glass arced through the air. The crystal shattered against my shoulder. Glass splinters bit into my skin, and I staggered back, a hiss escaping my lips. Red soaked into my dress. The wine mingled with blood, and for a moment I thought I might fall. Gasps. Then silence. A guest at the far end of the garden lowered her phone in shock. Too late. The recording was already made. Elaine stood frozen, glass stem still in her hand, trembling. Gerald reached for her, but she shook him off. Vanessa had appeared by the doorway, pale, unmoving. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides, eyes locked on mine. She didn't speak. I straightened, breath steadying. The sting in my skin pulsed in time with something deeper. Anger, maybe, or clarity. I didn't touch the wound. I didn't shout. I looked my mother in the eye. Her mask of poise cracked as the blood seeped beneath my collarbone. In that moment, I saw her. Small, desperate, unmoored. They drew blood over bricks. That was the last time I bled for them. They threw a glass. I found a deed. My shoulder ached beneath the gauze. The cut wasn't deep, but it throbbed in a way that reminded me of everything I'd swallowed for years. The nurse at urgent care had looked at me with practiced neutrality. No questions, no judgments. I appreciated that. I didn't need pity. I needed clarity. Back at my apartment, Caleb brewed tea I wouldn't drink and kept quiet. He knew me well enough not to ask if I was okay. Instead, he sat beside me, his hand resting near mine on the couch. Not touching, but there. Present. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight," he said softly. But I already had. Not everything, but something. Among the unopened mail I'd dumped weeks ago, an envelope stood out. Thick paper. Official seal. The return address read, Massachusetts Trust and Title. It was addressed to me. No mistake. I opened it out of habit, expecting some misfiled policy notice. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a reminder. Inside was a letter regarding a routine audit of the Doyle property. Specifically, the house. The one I grew up in. The one where I bled for refusing to surrender a piece of myself. The notice began, Dear Ms. Samantha Doyle, as trustee of record for 42 Grafton Hill Road. I read it twice, then again. My name. Not as a co-signer, not as a witness. As trustee. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. My breath stalled. A sharp, piercing memory returned. Grandma's living room, her hands wrapped around mine as she passed me a pen and a folder. I had been 24, still shell-shocked from a failed engagement and clinging to any semblance of direction. She had looked at me with quiet resolve. "You're the only one I trust not to waste it," she'd said. Not to lose it in drink or gambling or pride. I'd signed without fully understanding what I was holding. My mother had raged about it later, claimed I had manipulated her own mother. I hadn't. But I let her believe what she wanted. Now I understood. I called Helen Roth the next morning. Her office overlooked the city. Minimal but warm. Just like the woman herself. She offered me tea. I declined. "You're here about the notice?" she asked. I handed it over. She read quickly, then leaned back. "Yes," she said. "It's accurate." I blinked. "How long?" "Since 2017, she said. "Your grandmother appointed you sole trustee of the Doyle property. It bypassed probate when she passed. It's been in your legal control since then." I stared. "But they live there. They've always lived there." Helen nodded. "Residency doesn't equal ownership, and they've never contested the trust." "Because they didn't know," I murmured. She folded her hands. "Or they forgot. Or they assumed it was symbolic. Either way, they don't have legal standing." A pause stretched between us. "I can sell it?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "With notice. With paperwork. You'd need to follow the process carefully, but yes, you have full authority." I tried to process the implications. All the years they'd made me feel like I didn't belong, like I had nothing of value, when I had been holding the one thing they couldn't afford to lose. "This isn't just personal," Helen said, her voice lowering. "It's legal now. Be precise." I nodded. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk with the deed in my hands. The letters stared back, black and unapologetic. Samantha Doyle, trustee. They tried to control me with shame. Now I hold the keys to their roof. They barged into my office like they owned the walls. I let them scream. For the last time. The receptionist looked at me with wide eyes as Elaine and Gerald Doyle stormed past her desk. Gerald's voice boomed. "You think this is funny, Samantha? Selling the house behind our backs?" Elaine followed close behind, her mouth already moving, sharp and breathless. "You're ungrateful. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us?" I held up a hand. "Lower your voices. This isn't your mansion. It's my firm." The floor-to-ceiling windows behind me caught their distorted reflections. Blurred, angry, small. I didn't flinch. I didn't even rise. I simply tapped my screen and minimized the spreadsheets I'd been reviewing. Numbers would wait. Elaine stepped closer. "You think you've won something? That you've outsmarted us?" "No," I said. "I think I've finally stopped playing." Gerald jabbed a finger at my desk. "You've always been dramatic. If your grandmother hadn't been—" "Careful," I warned. "Defaming the dead isn't going to help you." My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Unknown number, one attachment. The message read, "You might need this someday. Figured it was yours to have." No name. But the preview told me enough. It was the patio, fairy lights, the flash of a wine glass in flight. Someone had caught it all. I looked up. "You'll want to sit down." Gerald scoffed. "We're not staying." "You will if you want to keep anything." Their expressions shifted just slightly, confusion edging into doubt. "I'm giving you a choice," I said, "because that's more than I was ever given." We met again 2 days later at a quiet cafe tucked beneath the shadow of a courthouse. Fitting, I thought. I'd chosen a private booth and reserved it under Helen Roth's name, just in case they tried anything dramatic again. Elaine arrived in a tailored coat, eyes darting. Gerald followed, looking tired for once. I let them order drinks. Then I laid the folder on the table. "This is the deed," I said. "These are the trust documents. And this—" I slid over a thin envelope. "Is your exit plan." Elaine didn't touch it. "You're threatening us." "No," I said. "I'm offering you terms." I outlined the options calmly. Option A, you vacate the house. In return, I give you 30% of the proceeds from the sale. Quietly. No court, no press, no questions. Gerald opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Option B, you fight me. We go to court. I bring all of this. I tapped the documents. And I add this. I pulled out my phone and hit play. The video wasn't long. 10 seconds. Elaine's hand. The glass. My shoulder. The stain. The silence. Elaine's face turned pale. "This is you," I said softly, throwing a glass at me. "Want the judge to see it too?" Silence. Not even the clink of a spoon from another table. Just the hiss of espresso behind the counter, far away. Gerald swallowed hard. "We need time." "You have 72 hours. Then I close, with or without your signature." Some inherited trauma. I sold mine. The real estate office smelled like laminate and ink, sterile, impersonal, perfect. Papers shuffled across the table. Pens clicked. Voices murmured with rehearsed professionalism. I signed the last document with a firm stroke. The house on Grafton Hill was no longer theirs, no longer mine. Just another asset transferred. Helen smiled slightly from across the table, her hands clasped. "That's it. It's done." I nodded. No fanfare, no applause, just finality. Outside, the sky was gray but gentle. I drove alone to the old house one last time, not out of nostalgia, just routine. I'd scheduled one final walkthrough, mostly to ensure everything had been removed, but also, I think, to say goodbye in my own way. The rooms were empty. Not hollow, just quiet. The walls no longer echoed with arguments or shame. They simply existed. Beige, cracked in places, sun-faded where portraits once hung. In the living room, I remembered hiding behind the couch at 8, trying not to cry after Elaine told me my laugh was annoying. In the kitchen, I remembered burning my first batch of cookies and being told I'd never be the domestic type. In the hallway, the mirror still hung. Crooked, just like always. I straightened it before I left. The upstairs bathroom door creaked the same way. That made me smile. I stood in what used to be my childhood bedroom. The carpet was gone now. The walls had been painted over, but I still knew which corner I used to sit in to read. That space, at least, had held me kindly. Downstairs, I placed the keys on the counter. Just 2. One for the front door, one for the back. "You win, Grandma," I whispered. "Real estate it is." 2 weeks later, I stood in a new room, this one filled with light and laughter. We were launching the Doyle Women's Startup Fund, a $200,000 seed grant for women launching small tech ventures in underserved communities. It was held in my grandmother's name. Not to rewrite history, but to expand her legacy beyond the family she'd tried to love. Caleb introduced me with a smile. I gave a short speech. Nothing flashy, just the truth. Afterward, one of the applicants, a girl barely 20 with big dreams and a bigger voice, hugged me. "You made this possible," she said. No one had ever said that to me before, not in that tone, not without a hidden condition. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. "You did what I never could. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "You still can, but only if you stop letting them decide for you." She read it instantly but didn't reply. That was okay. Silence, I'd learned, wasn't always a threat. Sometimes it was space. Back home, I lit a candle and let the quiet stretch around me like a warm coat. No echoes of slammed doors, no shards of broken glass, no apologizing for taking up space. They're homeless by their own making. I'm finally home in myself. The house was sold, the silence no longer suffocating but liberating. What was once a prison of control became proof that no legacy is owed to those who use love as leverage. Justice didn't come in shouts. It arrived with signatures, strategy, and a wound that finally closed. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes reclaiming your power doesn't mean shouting louder. It means knowing when to shut the door behind you.